This is Maharajas of Scale, a podcast where we go behind the scenes and talk to founders who are demolishing the myths around building and scaling a big business in India. These are the stories that have shattered the assumptions around Indian consumers and are changing the game completely. I am Krishna serial entrepreneur, co-founder of Flit, the fashion locator in town, and startup mentor, bringing you these stories. Hey everyone, chilly and a pretty rainy afternoon in Bangalore amidst the unending or the seemingly unending pandemic of coronavirus. But today we do have Vivek Khandelwal of iZooto with us. Vivek is doing a terrific job of ensuring businesses engage with their followers and all their customers. It's a less understood science, at least in India, but elsewhere where online marketing channels are well known, it is an indispensable tool. Vivek, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here, Krishna. I am excited about this conversation.
Wonderful. So Vivek, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're working on right now.
All right, great question. I'm Vivek Khandelwal. I'm a founder at iZooto. iZooto is an own audience marketing platform built for publishers. I won't make my intro a sales pitch, but I'll just stop there. I've been an entrepreneur for most of my life. iZooto / Enablement is my second startup. Prior to this, I was part of another startup which we ran for about good 7 years. And yeah, that's really how I define myself. Yeah, I like listening to podcasts just like you. Just like you, I also enjoy biking once in a while. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Pretty interesting. You said the previous startup, you ran that for about 7 years?
Yes.
Tell us a little more about it.
Okay. So the previous startup we back in 2009. In fact, it's a great just recently we got nominated in the NASSCOM Emerge 50 list for 2020, and the last time we got nominated in NASSCOM Emerge 50, it was 2010. We had our first startup, which was called Vouch / Applied Mobile Labs, was started in 2009. Back in the day when being a part of a startup was not cool. That startup started off as an edtech business. We were trying to help people connect with experts on a phone call. The idea was India is going to be a mobile heavy country. We are inherently inherently big believers of speaking and talking, right? And our first intuitive reaction when we are looking for something is, hey, can I speak with someone who can help me with this? So that's where Voice Tab started. And from there, the idea pivoted from edtech to adtech. And close to around 2015 is when we wrapped up the business to start iZooto.
Interesting. So how did you end up being an entrepreneur?
Okay, nobody has ever asked me that question. And come to think of it, so I ended up being an entrepreneur because I was part of this train journey back in college called as Jagriti Yatra. This is 2008. 2008 December is when Jagriti Yatra happened. This is essentially a train journey which takes a bunch of youngsters on an 18-day train journey across the country. I was part of that. I was part of the Jagriti Yatra in 2008, and that's when I met a bunch of enterprising people. I met a lot of entrepreneurs, people who were building stuff, people who were doing really, really cool things. And that journey essentially was a great tipping point for me personally, because after that journey, I was like, okay, you know what? It is making things and building things is a really, really cool thing. Right? There is no reason I should not be doing this. How did I end up being in the startup world? It was, just like everyone else, it was an accident. My then co-founder, called me up one fine day because he had met me on Jagriti Yatra. He figured that this guy knows something about the internet or marketing on the internet. And he said, I'm trying to do this thing. Do you want to be a part of this? I said, sure, this sounds like fun. Let's give it a shot, right? And one thing led to another. And before I realized, I was neck deep into what we were building back in the day. So yeah, that's how I just sort of stumbled into the so-called startup ecosystem. Yeah.
Very interesting. In fact, we did cover Jagriti Yatra's 2019 journey last year on Maharajas of Scale, and it's the first time we are actually speaking to an entrepreneur that has been through Jagriti Yatra, or at least began his journey. But was Jagriti Yatra or participating in itself an accident of sorts, or was there something else behind that?
It was literally an accident because, funnily, right, in 2008, 2009, the internet was not as powerful as it is today, right? The first Jagriti Yatra actually happened in 1997, and this was a decade after which this was happening. And it was a very and back in the day there was literally no information on what exactly will happen in the yatra. I had applied to be a part of the yatra because I thought it'll be fun hanging out with a lot of young people and going on a train journey across the country. Living on a train was a fun idea, and when you are in third year of college, pretty much anything is fun. Everything and anything is fun as long as it's not academics, right? So yeah, that's how I had approached Jagriti Yatra, because there was literally nothing available on the internet. There was no agenda page on the website. It was a blank canvas, as if we had walked in with absolutely zero expectations of what the yatra will be all about. And fast forward to 2019. If you were applying for the yatra today, you would know exactly what will happen on the yatra. You have so many, alumni to speak with. You know precisely the speakers who will come on the yatra and so on and so forth, right? I walked in cold. I had no idea what this is going to be. So yeah.
And in some sense, you were swept off your feet.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The yatra was, I think it really shakes you. It just changed my perspective, of the world, right? As a teenager, as somebody who was in, 19, 20 years of age, you carry a lot of energy, right? You want to change the world, right? If I may say so. And but then at the same time, coming from a middle class family, I had only stayed in 2 cities throughout, 20 years of my life. And then, so my perspective of the world was very shallow or narrow, if I may say. And the yatra sort of really helped me expand that perspective. It helped us understand, it helped me understand personally problems that existed outside of my worldview, helped me understand how are people actually thinking of doing things at scale, what scale means in the first place, what is social impact, ethics, integrity, moral compass, right? A lot of these new concepts were sort of revealed in those 18 days. And I think most importantly, when you are with the right set of people, when you have the right set of people around you, right, serendipity is what happens, right? I think there is no other way to explain the experience of Jagriti Yatra but then that single word, serendipity, right? Magic will happen at some point in time just because you've built so many amazing connections and you've been exposed to so many unique perspectives from people who have been building stuff, people who have been working on the ground. I remember there were 2 stories that shook me to the core back in the day. One was the Nandi Foundation. Nandi Foundation is in Hyderabad, if I'm not wrong, or Bangalore, and they run the midday meal program. Back in the day, they were running the world's biggest kitchen, which was serving 5 lakh kids a day. And the founder of the foundation was also an IIT Bombay alum. He took us for a tour of the kitchen. He showed here is what scale actually means. Scale is not, serving lunch to 500 people in a hostel, right? Scale is serving meals, hygiene, nutritious, warm meals to 5 lakh kids in a city. That's what scale means, right? And that idea completely changed my perspective of how to look at things, right? So yeah, the yatra, I think, in more than one ways, changed or contributed to a lot where I am today. Yeah.
What was the other story? You said 2 stories touched you.
The second one is of Arvind Eye Care. So Arvind Eye Care, I'm not sure if you know about it, but I think it's the most exciting business model that exists out there, which delivers social impact at a magnitude which is just not imaginable, and it deploys economies of scale so beautifully, right? I remember they were treating for cornea for ₹80 in 2009, right? And they were doing some 100,000 surgeries per month, right? And it was literally an assembly line operation. And when you listen to the founders of Arvind Eye Care talk about how deeply they are concerned about making eye care, making healthcare affordable, how deeply they are passionate about making this work at scale. I remember they were doing telemedicine, right? The so-called, what we experience right now with Practo, right? Where we have a doctor on a phone call, or a video call explaining us what to do. They were doing this back in 2009, and they were doing it extremely well already. So that story taught me about that, no matter what, which category or which segment you're trying to operate in, you can actually still build a sustainable business, right? And yet have a social impact. So yeah, those 2 stories were extremely powerful. They completely changed the way I looked at things.
Very fascinating. We will come back to the social impact angle, a little while into the episode, because I do want to pick your brains on the social impact angle, because both the stories that you share, both about Nandi Foundation, and both of these are about social impact. But as far as I was just checking out the Nandi Foundation website, if it is a midday meal program, I'm not sure if they were still doing it or they were known for it back then, while they are definitely based in Hyderabad. The largest kitchen, that organization, is based in Bangalore. It is called the Akshay Patra scheme, which is run by ISKCON.
Yeah, so Akshay Patra runs the midday meal program, right? Nandi Foundation is the one who runs a 24/7 kitchen for the midday meal program, right? I'm not sure if they're part of the same mission, but that's how it was described to us. Maybe their scale has changed. Maybe Akshay Patra does far more today, but yeah,
correct. Possibly. So that's an angle that I'm not aware of. There is another Indian politician who's no longer there, Anant Kumar, who was a member of parliament from South Bangalore. His own family was also associated with the Akshay Patra Foundation. Still is associated. He's no longer there. But yeah, awesome. It's funny you should talk about, in some sense, getting goosebumps from seeing the unlimited possibilities of being a creator, right? I recently, on one YouTube episode, I heard Sadhguru, who's followed by a lot of people and who's also, derided by a lot of people. I don't have any opinion of him one way or the other, but for long in India, we've believed in karma, we've believed in action, we've believed in attachmentless karma. But Sadhguru's interpretation of karma yoga is that life is in some sense a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So of both your words and your actions, not just of your words and your thoughts, but also your actions, which means you can actually create the life you want and actually sculpt it And I recently remember getting into a discussion about how to make our kids less addicted to phones and then less bored. And I remember responding, today most of us, we actually look at ourselves as consumers, right? From consuming Netflix content or YouTube content or Twitter tweets, any of these, 99.9% of the world is actually a consumer. But the joy actually comes from being a creator. When you are a creator, a different sort of a joy, is invoked in you. I suppose that's what you saw. And I keep telling people, if you want to know why we are where we are, why we feel stagnated as a country, that's because we are not creating enough, right? I have a slightly different analogy to say. In the last 100 years, how many words have we contributed to the English language, right? Once the British left India, for instance, guru and all those words, dharma, we contributed a lot because we were contributing and creating. But if you see the last few years, the reason our language is under threat, a lot of things are under threat, is because, for example, why do we call a computer a computer? We didn't invent it. Some people of some other language invented it. So there is proof that we have to be creators. And, at Maharajas of Scale, our focus is to get creator stories out there. Awesome. This is a little bit of a longer prologue, but, a very exciting discussion. So let's jump into iZooto story. And was there anything from the first startup that sort of acted as either as a catalyst or some sort of pixie dust when you thought of iZooto?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So in fact, it was literally a derivation of our learnings of Applied Mobile Labs. So as I mentioned, we were working. We had pivoted to ad tech as our business model in 2014-15, and back then, so 2014 is the year when the internet in India went crazy, right? This is when we saw a splurge of startups being built around mobile. We saw a massive adoption of mobile apps. We saw in fact, I remember back in the day, everybody wanted to have a mobile app, right? They wanted to have a mobile app for Android, iOS, also back in the day, BlackBerry OS and Symbian OS as well. And we because we were working back in the day, we were working with all reputed e-commerce brands, every single OTA, right, telecom operators. So we were right in the middle of this ecosystem, and we were sort of worried about this trend which was emerging. And I remember a slide which came out in the Google Zeitgeist presentation, which said that in 2015, every seventh day, an Android mobile user had to delete photos from their mobile because their mobile phones did not have enough storage. And this led us to wonder that why exactly are people downloading these apps? I mean, I consider myself as a frequent flyer, and I don't have the Make My Trip app on my phone. My phone's real estate is very, 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 very precious. And back in the day, every single person was trying to sell me an app, right? Right from Just Dial, Sulekha. Everybody thought that we needed a plumber every single day, or we had a carpenter requirement every single day. It just did not make sense. So with that as an observation, and the trend being that mobile was being on mobile was a thing, right? And the adoption for mobile phone was going through the roof. The telecom operators were adding millions and millions of subscribers every single month, right? So we said, okay, there is something that is broken here. People want to be on mobile. People will be on mobile for sure. But the way they are looking at driving their mobile presence, which is mobile app only or mobile app first, right? That doesn't seem to resonate. This is, by the way, the same time when Flipkart and Myntra went mobile app only, if you recall. So we said, okay. So we then asked these brands that why are you going so crazy about driving these mobile app installs when your retention rate is like a couple of hours. I remember I saw this one slide from App Annie. App Annie is an app analytics platform, and the slide said that, and this is India's largest OTA till date. It said that their median app retention time on a mobile device was 8 hours, and it was mind-boggling because they were spending like a couple of $1 million every single month just to drive app installs. And I could not believe this. It was like, if the end user is uninstalling their app in less than 8 hours, why are they spending so much money? And the answer we got was, if we have the mobile app on somebody's phone, we can send them push notifications to engage them, to retain them, and to get them to use the product more and more. So we said, okay, so the problem is getting engagement right on mobile. The answer to that problem is not having a mobile app, right? And this is exactly the time when, so in 2015 is when Chrome as a browser rolled out the push notification API. And then it was a matter of putting these two pieces of the jigsaw together to say, okay, what we have here is a potential way of changing how engagement on a mobile device can look like, right? Or how engagement on a browser can happen without forcing the user to install an app and stuff. So yeah, that's what sort of acted as a catalyst for us to sort of look at things beyond ad tech and say, okay, you know what? Now we're going to make a subscription product for these brands to help them solve their engagement challenges.
Very interesting. So, in some sense, is the mobile application wave reached some sort of a crescendo, and then your inference was that it has hit a crescendo, but it has not necessarily solved the engagement problem, and therefore this crescendo is going to come down, and then once the dust settles, there is going to be need for engagement as well, and that's the space where we should be focused on. Would that be an accurate description?
Yeah, so correct, right? Because I think that's just picture perfect, right? And the problem was so much more specific to that time. In 2020, people have way more space on their mobile devices as compared to 2014 or 15, right? In this era, people are also way more comfortable downloading apps, right? And also the way users are engaging, the end user is engaging with apps is very different as compared to 2015, right? So the problem was very, very pinpointedly acute in that time period only.
Very interesting. So you went from being an ad tech platform, you had worked with all these telecom majors, and that's, I think, looking back at how you made that leap, it's like one of those long leaps, right, Vivek? These master athletes do between two cliffs. When you actually look at it, there is a deep chasm. There doesn't seem to be a connection between the two. And therefore, you're wondering, how do I get from here to there? But in hindsight, it looks like such an easy leap. Was it like that when you actually made the leap?
Yes and no, right? Yes, because a lot of our experience helped us a lot. I mean, in all honesty, right? We had an unfair advantage because we were already talking to these brands. We had active conversations, active engagement with these brands. We had access to a lot of marketing teams who we could go back to, who we could call up and say, hey, is this a legit problem that you're currently facing right now? Right? And we could get first level feedback on our hypothesis. At the same time, transitioning from an ad tech model to a subscription product model, yes, that was a massive leap. We had our learnings there, and it's something which we speak very, very passionately at Opeka, which is the concept of founder market fit. When I look back at our 2014 days, the best way to sort of describe us was an enterprise grade, a team that has great experience of working with large enterprises, because all said and done, we were dealing with the 4 only operators in India, right? And which means, we were very, very comfortable, walking into a room, addressing a bunch of CXOs, suit up, boot up, do the whole presentation, and do the whole 9 yards, right? That's what we were extremely good at, right? And then changing from that mindset to saying, okay, you know what? Now we are a subscription product, selling possibly, let's say, at $100 a month, right? And for this ticket size, the inside sales model is going to be the best model. So that mindset shift, which is you do not have to now walk into a customer's office, but you have to just sort of sell them on a phone call, right? That mindset shift took us a while for us, but when it happened, it was very, very enlightening. So yeah,
that is I don't know if anybody has coined a phrase for that. I possibly would have to say sales product fit model, because I've seen a lot of founders make this mistake, which is not knowing which product is an inside sales model, which product is an enterprise sales model, which product is a inbound funnel. So it takes, I've seen founders who do a personal one-on-one based sales model. Even for it's like if you built a social network, going around and telling everybody to download is actually a wrong way to sell that product, right? So the sooner you figure out that this is the sales model that is going to work for you, the lesser time and resources that you're going to spend on it. It's interesting that happened. How exactly did you make that draw that inference? Was it on a hunch or was it something else?
So to be honest, right, we took our own sweet time to sort of conclude that point that, hey, you know what, we will need to approach this slightly differently. And I think it took us about a good 7 to 8 months, right, to have the product up and running after having had a bunch of conversations with our early customers to say, okay, you know what, here is what they have asked us, here is their problem, right? And we can actually solve this problem remotely without walking into their office. And guess what? At this ticket size, this just seems like a fair deal, because you know what? These SaaS products that we are buying right now, nobody is selling us, FYI, right? We're just going to the websites, putting a card on file and consuming as we go along, right? Can we get there? No, that was one question which we constantly asked ourselves, right? At the same time, we also had the fortune of us being 4 founders, right? Which meant that we could split a lot of core jobs between the 4 of us, right? So, for example, Neil, who is the CEO and founder, he focused on selling to large enterprise customers within India, right? Which was fantastic because it helped us, get the cash machine rolling, right? I took on the responsibility of, okay, you know what, I'm going to set up an inbound funnel and an inside sales process. If the same person is asked to do both, right, that's like, literally making no progress, because you can't sell in 2 boats, right? At the same time, we also had, the remaining 2 founders. Shrikant took care of everything under the product umbrella, and Sachin took care of technology, right? And we were sort of trying to figure out that, hey, you know what, let's see what works, right? I think in the early days, it's all about throwing stuff on the wall and see what sticks. So yeah.
Very interesting. So would you describe this a jump to iZooto as a pivot? Is that a good characterization?
It wasn't a pivot as such, right? It was, we were very clear that we do not want to do the ad tech business, right? Which is why we started fresh as a new company, a new organization, right? Yeah, so it wasn't really a pivot as such. We had gone through way too many pivots in a previous company, honestly speaking, for our own good. So what we were very clear about is we want to build a product-based business. We want to be in the recurring revenue business, right? We have to realize the value of that, right? And that's why it was a fresh, ground-up org which we had built up.
Interesting. So if you would indulge me for a moment, 2014, I still remember going to the NASSCOM Product Council, the annual event that happens where products that are being built in India are showcased, and InMobi, right, InMobi, which has done a terrific job and is eulogized by practically everyone, had made it in the ad tech business and in the mobile business, right? So every now and then we do hear about them being India's ad tech unicorn. So if you could talk about two things. One is you guys were in that space but yet decided to move out. And the other thing is what you just said intrigues me a little more. You went through far too many pivots, or a lot of pivots in that previous one. Can you talk about those two and your experiences there?
Okay. So in 2009, when we had started off White Staff, we started off with we made the cardinal mistake of building the product first and then figuring out our distribution or our sales motion. And back in 2009, there was no credit card processing. I mean, you could still make a payment on the internet, sure, but it wasn't like the whole country was running to pay using credit cards, right? So if I had to patch a young aspiring founder with you because he wanted inputs on entrepreneurship, right? There was no way to actually charge that end user for the knowledge which you will be getting from you today. So which is why we said, okay, you know what? Because this problem cannot be solved right now, or if we solve it, we will be adding way too many barriers for the end user, right? Let's throw this open. How do we take this to the masses? So we said, okay, let's go down the telecom operator path, which is when we said, okay, we will convert this into a value-added service and take this to the operators, right? Which is when we started working with likes of Docomo, Airtel, Vodafone, and so on and so forth, right? We did that bit for a good 3.5 years, and that's when we figured out that okay, knowledge seeking and knowledge providing is a good thing, but if we translate this or if we extrapolate this to businesses and end consumers, where somebody is seeking a specific product or service and somebody is providing a specific product or service, can we pack these two, right? So we said, okay, you know what, which is essentially the Just Dial model, is that it is running on a telecom operator, right? So that was the second pivot, right? Where we said, okay, we will now convert this ed tech business into an ad tech business, right? So, and by the way, all of this is still happening on voice, text, USSD, right? There is no mobile web yet. The third pivot essentially was when we said, okay, you know what? The mobile web is hot. There are a lot of people who are trying to consume information on the mobile browser, right? We should try to build an offering which is for mobile web. We started building, we built an entire education platform which allowed people to consume content, videos, text, images, and whatnot on a mobile browser. All of this was still, within the realm of a telecom operator, right? Which is what made it disproportionately unfair for us as providers, because back in the day, value-added service providers got a 30% revenue share, and 70% was kept with the telecom operator, right? So we were in this, heavily skewed model, which was skewed towards the operators rather than us as creators or builders, right? And that's when we sort of realized that the next business that we will do, we would sort of want to control our customers ourselves and not go through a middleman, right? So yeah, those were some of the learnings and pivots which we had gone through in the previous organization. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. So let's talk about the owned audience engagement angle a little bit. And this is not something easily understood, because all of us rack up some followers. The phrase essentially retargeting, if we actually analyze it a little more, what it means is, hey, somebody got to your web page or your ad, or they got to it, they saw it, they were interested, and maybe they didn't stay too long. All you're doing is you're just going back and telling them, hey, you clicked our banner or something. You're not essentially saying that, but you're using that earlier interaction and telling them out of sight is out of mind. Let me get back in sight for you, right? So in some sense, that's what retargeting is. But when you started iZooto and all of this owned audience engagement, what were some human behaviors that you were modeling in your mind, saying that, so one aspect is the storage on mobile phones and the craze for apps that you were looking at. What were some other user behavior or audience behavior or human behavior that you modeled and said, these are exactly how humans are thinking, this is what they need, this is where we are going to position ourselves, and this is what is going to help us win?
Okay, I'll tell you a short story, which I think will help the audience and the listeners understand what exactly is own audience marketing and why is it so important today. When the Indian government recently banned TikTok and I think a couple of, I think over 100 other Chinese apps, they ended up creating, obviously, insane opportunity for Indian makers and builders. But what also happened in this process was that there were hundreds and thousands of TikTok influencers who were suddenly stripped of the access to their audience. Now, when that happens, right, let's just sort of take a step back and try to visualize a TikTok influencer who on day one makes a video, gets 500 followers, fantastic, life is encouraging. The influencer goes out there and says, okay, you know what, I'm going to make more videos because my audience is loving this, right? She goes on building these videos, like super engaging content, super fun content, ends up amassing like 1 million followers. Life is good. Suddenly a brand comes up and says, hey, you know what? Can you advertise our toothpaste to your followers? She says, sure. Can you pay me for this? They say yes. They end up, she eventually creates a small business opportunity for herself, right? Fast forward, few months, she now has a team of people working with her, creating this content continuously, engaging millions of followers on TikTok. And at the same time, she now has a steady stream of revenue coming in from these brands who want to tap into that audience, right? Very standard process, happens all the time on Facebook, Insta, TikTok, YouTube. Nothing new about it. Now the sad part, right? The moment the Indian government bans TikTok, she no longer has access to those millions and millions of followers. All of a sudden, her business is down to zero. She can do literally nothing. She does not know. She has no. She doesn't even have an email ID of a single user, right? Who she could email and say, hey, you know what? Here is my latest video. Because they've never really focused on owning the audience. They're focused on building an audience, but never focused on owning the audience, right? And that is the exact problem which we sort of have been obsessed about, that brands and creators and builders have to realize that all these platforms, Google, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Tinder, everybody is building and owning for themselves, right? They're not aligned with your business model. They're aligned with their own business model. So yeah.
So let's say if these influencers had iZooto, how would that change their world? How would that change their world? What would they do specifically?
Okay, so I don't think we at iZooto solve the entire problem, right? Our job is so much more of enablement. So I think the first and the most important thing, and something which you will see now happening all the time, right, is people now finally realize that we have to. So the CEO of Shopify said it the best. There are only two things that you truly own on the internet. The first one is a domain name, and the second one is your marketing list. Right? The rest, every single thing on the internet is rented, including your followers on Twitter, your followers on Facebook, your subscribers on YouTube, and so on and so forth. So the first and most important thing that we recommend these brands, these creators, these bloggers to do is have their own website where people can go and experience the brand. Yeah, as simple as that, right? Having your own website is the most important thing. Some people have learned this the hard way. For example, there have been there've been a lot of brands who went out there and shifted to Medium for blogging, right? Only to realize that Medium will change its business model right in the middle of the year and say, hey, you know what? We're not going to be a CMS-focused business. We're going to be a paywall-focused business, right? In fact, Medium's long-term strategy still remains unclear to most people out there right now. And then they had to switch back to WordPress, and that created a lot of mess for them. So, so Medium changed its business model, in the middle of the year, leaving these brands, these bloggers hanging out there, right? Because, and by the way, Medium's long-term strategy till date remains unclear. So the number one rule remains, right? That have your own domain, have your own website where your followers, your believers, your fans can come and experience your brand in its purest form. Once that is established, that's when you need to start thinking about how do you build a true flywheel, true flywheel to drive engagement. What that essentially means is, how do you convert an anonymous visitor into a repeat visitor? How do you convert a repeat visitor into an email subscriber? How do you convert an email subscriber into a loyal reader? How do you convert a loyal reader into a fan who is willing to support you by paying you dollars, by either subscribing to you? And how do you convert that fan into somebody who goes out there and talks about your content, your brand to the network? That's the audience engagement flywheel which we sort of enable at iZooto for our customers.
Yeah. So they're a terrific company. They have their own reasons and needs. They obviously have enabled it, but a lot of us that get out there don't know that this is what happens, especially while for normal consumers and normal people that may not be, all that important, but for creators, especially people whose lives depend on it, earning depends on it, that's absolutely essential. You're so true about that. The funny thing is, this brings me to an interesting product we just launched recently. We launched a payment guarantee product called Vouch. On all these platforms, essentially on all these marketplaces, what happens is you go to the marketplace because of certain things that it offers, like payment protection for both the buyer and the seller. There is a certain degree of governance, but people who establish themselves, so people who do a significant amount of business, like take the example of that influencer, for instance, she or he has a lot of followers. They built sort of a mini business there, right? So now the marketplace needs them more than they need the marketplace. They do need the marketplace, or they do need that platform, but the platform needs them more after a point, right? So we realize that a lot of them don't have these tools, and in many cases, so think about the other smaller things when something like platform disappears. Your comments, your ratings, your likes, all these other things disappear as well, right? And so we realize that there is this huge set of long tail of data points which are actually stuck in multiple islands of places. And so we launched Vouch. Vouch is a payment guarantee trust building app. Essentially, wherever there is a need for two people, where there is either a time delay or a distance that separates either a product or service delivery, Vouch comes in. It holds the money till the buyer and seller completes the transaction, which is what we launched last month. But that's just the core aspect of it, or rather the basic aspect of it. The next aspect is for people to continue to, for example, a freelancer works with maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 projects a year, but he doesn't capture all of that customer content anywhere. All of them are stuck in some email, stuck in multiple places. So for them to get it all in one place, so this whole, when people engage on a marketplace, there is a disintermediation desire, right? A deep disintermediation desire. Because once you've found someone, you already established, you're thinking, okay, how can I disintermediate the marketplace? Because the marketplace charges such a hefty sum, right? It could be some for access. It could be something to conduct the transaction. So interesting to see similar parallels on the online ecosystem as well. Great. So talk about the scale journey. What sort of scale are you at right now?
Okay. You know what? We just had our all hands yesterday, and we're talking about our scale yesterday only to our entire team. So we currently process about 72 billion notifications a month. So that's the kind of scale we currently operate at. And then ace that with we touch about 2 billion users every single month across the globe. Okay, actually there are 2 billion devices, more than unique users. 2 billion unique devices is what we sort of touch across the globe right now. And that's the kind of scale we are currently operating at. We work with some of the largest media brands and media publishers across the globe. To name Tencent, Times of India, Indian Express, Z Group, Network 18, Asianet, right, News Corp, Hearst, right, some of the more popular, easily recallable names that we work with currently. And the focus is very simple. We're trying to help the editors, who are creating and publishing articles and stories day in, day out. We're helping them reach their audience precisely when they publish their article, so that they can get people back on the website, they can listen, they can get the feedback on their stories, on their work really quickly, right? As compared to waiting for somebody to send out an email the next day, or waiting for Google News to possibly pick up that story in their feed and so on, right? So that's what we're currently operating at. As a reference point, we were at I think last year March or April, we were at 5 billion notifications a month, and we sort of gone 15x since then in terms of our scale of operations itself. Literally hockey stick in terms of product usage, which is a great metric to sort of establish product adoption per se, right, from the way we look at it.
Wow, interesting. So we'll come back to the beginnings of that scale story and what that looked like. But what sort of revenue are you at? How are the financials looking? Talk to us about profitability. Anything on that you can share?
Oh yeah, sure. So we at iZooto have been a profitable business right from the first year. Right, we've been bootstrapped and profitable. I think we're sort of now in our journey, in our 1 to 5 mil journey. We crossed the 1 mil threshold, if I'm not wrong, about 2 years ago, right? And we sort of I think 1.5 years ago is when we crossed our 1 mil threshold, right? Which essentially, in the B2B SaaS space, that's the first major milestone, which ensures that you are now no more in survival mode. You're now essentially in the thrival mode, right? And correct, absolutely, yes. That's what, and we're now on to our journey from. I think we sort of crossed the 4 mil mark a few months ago. So yeah.
Okay. So you're a tech business. You're not a people-heavy business at all, obviously. So then, would it be a stretch to say you must be insanely profitable now?
We do enjoy, the margins of a typical software business. Yeah. So I would not refrain from saying that. Yeah.
No. Happy for you. We need businesses. We need businesses like these where, in some sense, the whole revenue and the profitability equation is actually inverted, right? So we usually hear of the other spectrum. Not that there is anything wrong with it. And I remember talking to Prasanna of Upeka on the SaaS episode, where he corrected my own perception that these large gargantuan businesses were the way to go. And I've had this theory that ever since 3D printing, all these things came in, in some sense, there's a lot that we need to get right as a country, but in some sense, Indians, we are not good at organizing ourselves on a massive scale, right? So we are not good at organizing ourselves into 20,000, 30,000, 100,000, I mean, whatever exists in Wipro, Infosys, IBM. I think it's some sort of accident. And I don't know. When I actually personally see the revenue equation, right? Take a Microsoft which has close to maybe 80, 90,000 employees, the revenue per employee that they get versus what we see. Not that there is anything wrong in it, but I feel we are possibly still in some sense at heart a tribal nation. We are good in smaller teams, so therefore this whole SaaS thing, all of these startups are all, they can grow, and we need wealth to be created in this country. And fantastic that you guys are. I'm certain that you'll soon be one of the poster childs of that revolution if you already aren't. So let's start about the beginnings a little bit. In 2015, when you made that shift, how long? Talk about that journey. How that was. Did it feel like you guys were in a tunnel, or when did you first feel that you have something going here?
Okay, good question. I remember it was 2017, 31st December, when I had sent out an email to the team saying that, and I'm a big fan of the movie Interstellar. If you haven't watched it, you should absolutely watch it. And
I have.
You have? Amazing. Okay. So I remember when Cooper is taking the Ranger through the wormhole, and he says, in fact, when he's asked to take the Ranger through the wormhole, he's told that we know there's something out there that is promising. We don't know what that world looks like. We don't know how it will be, but we know it is promising. Right? That's what I had told the team on the eve of 31st December, and that's how because back in 2017, 2018, we were growing. We were growing fast. We were serving a whole bunch of customers. We were serving customers in the banking space. We were serving customers in e-commerce, in publishers, and pretty much everybody that we could find was a customer. And that's when I think our journey with Opekha started off, and which came in as a big relief, because they told us that sailing in forget sailing in two boats. You're trying to sail in multiple boats, right? You sort of need to nail down your customer persona really well for you to grow sustainably in the future, right? And we actually did nail down our persona in 2018. We committed to e-commerce being our target persona, and we focused on them. We tried building for them, right? And that's where we actually saw that there was a gap between what we were building and what our customers expected, right? But then most importantly, there was a gap in the whole founder market fit problem again came back into picture, right? We were trying to build for an SMB market, whereas we as founders had a great fit for an enterprise market. And we were going through this motion, I think for almost 3 or 4 quarters, where we sort of realized that, hey, you know what, we're seeing this massive churn right now. We need to solve this problem, which is when we sort of figured out that, okay, you know what, the problem is not the churn. The problem is the customer that we're trying to go after, right? These customers are not getting incredible value from the product, which is when we looked at a different segment of customers who were still a part of our who were still using our product very extensively, and this was the media and the publisher segment. And when we sort of looked deeper into the way they were using the product, right, that's when our eyes lit up for the first time. I still remember our first customer interview, which we had with an editorial team, and the editor's exact words were these, and I quote, "When I send a push notification to my entire audience using iZooto, I am able to see 1,500 people on my article in the next 1 minute. That is like sniffing crack cocaine for me. Forget vitamins, forget painkillers. If you're selling drugs on the street, you are the hottest guy on the street, right? So that's what sort of made us realize that, hey, the problem we are solving, or the problem that we have solved unknowingly for this segment, is way more acute, right? And then we also took a step back to see, okay, who exactly is building for publishers, for bloggers at large? And the answer, unfortunately, was actually very few people. I remember I had downloaded the MarTech. Have you seen the MarTech landscape, which is released every year? That beautiful collage, which has some 5,000 logos in it.
You mean khichdi, not collage?
Correct. So that
yeah, I have seen that.
You have seen that, right? Yeah. So that
I have.
Now has over 8,000 MarTech companies in it. A fun thing to do on a weekend is to actually download the damn Excel sheets and go through every single company by yourself. We actually did that. And that's when we realized, oh my God, nobody is actually building for the publishers out there in the world. Because everybody thinks or believes that the Googles and the Facebooks and the Twitter of the world will actually take care of these media publishers. And when you go back to the publishers to say, hey, so how is Google treating you, right? They will have mixed emotions on their face, because they're like, these guys changed their algorithm again last month, and the traffic went for a toss. And for 3 days, we were wondering, what should we do? Should we fire 20% of our people, of our team, because our traffic was down by 20%, which meant our revenue was down by 20%. And that's the kind of dilemma that these publishers were dealing with month on month, and by the way, not just from one platform. They were facing this lack of predictability from every single social media platform out there. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, you name it, they have seen it, right? In fact, as recent as 2 months back, when the Indian government banned the Chinese apps, one of the apps they had banned was called UC Browser. UC Browser, where a lot of publishers contributed up to 20% of their total traffic. Imagine if 20% of your traffic falls off the cliff tomorrow morning. What do you do now? You have 20% less revenue. What do you do now? There is no magical wand to get this back, right? And that's when, the problem of audience ownership becomes bigger and bigger and bigger for you. And that's really, been, I think that's the best way to sort of understand our journey at iZooto. We're now dealing with a segment of customers that are massively underserved and are also extremely inefficiently served when they are served. So it is literally, for lack of a better word, a blue ocean out there. There is nobody who is building for them, and those who are building for them are not serving them the right way.
I think it's an extremely powerful sort of a need, isn't it? Because I quote this article, I don't know if it was on Vouch or another venture beat, I don't remember, where it talked about the death of the internet startup. That was the title of the article. And essentially, the article says the internet essentially has become sort of a walled garden of 3 or 4 players. You either are in Twitter universe or in Facebook or in Insta, or if you're in the Apple ecosystem, that's a walled garden by itself. And the organic growth that you could have before couldn't be seen anymore. And as it is, you're already walled. And on top of it, you have something like a black swan event, which is like the Chinese incursion, which creates app banning of apps, which is sort of like a double whammy, right? You put in so much money, you put in so much of your effort building all of this, and this happens and it disappears. which means that there's a massive opportunity to build independent audience tools to actually, once you start acquiring them in some place, you start owning them elsewhere. What is that magic formula? What is that magic product? We don't know, but I think you guys have started on that path.
Yeah, I mean, it's so, it's so empowering to sort of see that with the pandemic and the year that 2020 has been, right? These problems have just multifolded for publishers. Ad revenue went through a massive roller coaster in the last 2 quarters, right? We're seeing recovery now, which is great, but it essentially taught publishers that they need to consider revenue models beyond advertising. And there are only so many options, right? There is e-commerce, there is subscription revenue. There's only so much so many business models that are actually out there right now. And the number one rule, right, to sort of build a business which is where you are selling something to someone, is to know the someone. If you do not know who is reading your newspaper, if you do not know who is consuming your content, how would you sell anything ever to these customers? In fact, you can't even call them customers, right? You have no right to call them customers.
They're almost like bots.
Exactly the point, right? It's like you go into the mall and you go to the food court and you had a meal at McDonald's, but the mall is calling you their customer. It doesn't make sense. So yeah, that's how most most publishers have operated for the longest time, and the pandemic and the year 2020 have really been a blessing in disguise, forcing them to rethink their business models, forcing them to look at all possible mistakes, all possible flaws that exist today, right? At least the self-awareness is on an all-time high today. Yeah, I'm at least happier. I'm happy about that part.
So talk about that time in 2018, which I think you talk about like a turning point. 2015 when you started this, how was that? Was there, because you're bootstrapped, obviously you're not funded, which means you were making, did you have any money left over from your previous startup which you parlayed into this? And how was the start? You were already, because of your ad tech business, you were already working with a few entities which allowed you to launch the initial product and test it out. Is that how it all panned out?
Right. So when we started selling to anyone and everyone. Yes, we had our unfair advantage of being part of the ecosystem, which enabled us to sell quickly, sell fast, and fortunately, we came in from a mindset of building revenue first. So we were able to have our revenue flywheel in motion really quickly, and we were able to, and in fact, it sort of continues to be the backbone of the company. Right, we've always been revenue focused right from day zero. So that sort of ensured that we were able to get to break even and profitability. We did carry a very small amount from our savings, which were invested in as founders back into the business. Yeah, which sort of gave us some runway of I think about 5 to 6 months back in 2016 when we had started off, and then by the time it was 2018, we were already profitable. We had some money in the bank, but we also knew back then that doing this with 2 or 3 different segment of customers will be a suicide mission. We had to make a pick, and it's not like we had the luxury of saying, okay, we will not serve these type of customers anymore, right? You just do not have that luxury in life. So we said, okay, you know what? We will gradually shift the focus to this new segment of media publishers. We will double down our efforts in terms of product and marketing and sales to serve these customers more efficiently, right? And we'll continue to support our existing customers from all the diverse segments that they are from right now, right? And what has sort of worked really well is that the focus, focusing on one clear segment of customers, I think that always gives you exponential results. Right? The moment you're able to align the entire org in one single direction, in one single against one single customer persona, life just becomes simpler. You're able to market better. You're able to sell faster. You're able to onboard them swiftly. You're able to support and you're able to resolve their support tickets faster. You're able to help them get to the value metric really quickly as a success team, right? And you're able to build for only the key use cases which your customers actually care for, right? I think that the choice which we made in 2018, 2019 was very, very critical, because that sort of really set the path for truly exponential growth for us.
Right. So let's go to the founder story a bit. How did the founding team come together? How did the founders? Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah. So I was part of Vouch right from day zero. Neil joined us in 2011, and he joined us as a VP. He joined us as business head. I mean, it was a small team, right? He came in as somebody who had solid experience with telecom operators, right? He came in there, and then Sachin, who is a CTO and founder now, he joined us in 2012. He came in from Yahoo back in 2012, and so that's how the three of us came together. Sachin then left Applied Mobile Labs to start another company, which was called Question, in 2015, which is when Shrikant, our fourth co-founder, joined us, right? And then Sachin sort of came back in 2016 when we said, okay, you know what, we're going to do a new startup with this new problem, with this new focus. So we've been all together now for a good 7, 8, 9 years now. Yeah,
it's pretty interesting. Coming back is like the return of the prodigal founder, as I say it. Very rarely happens, doesn't it?
I mean, so he did not leave on bad terms, to be honest, right?
Oh no, that's not what I'm referring to at all.
But yes, coming back is very important. Coming back is critical. Yes, I absolutely agree to that. Yeah.
I'm just wondering. People usually leave, but coming back obviously means that if he came back, obviously it means that he didn't leave on a bad note. That's for sure. But right. So that's pretty interesting. And let's talk about. Do you face challenges attracting people? Maybe not right now, because maybe you're already so focused and to a certain degree on the path to a great degree of success. Were there challenges when you were setting up your culture or recruiting team members earlier?
Challenges. I think in general, hiring or team building remains the cornerstone of building a sustainable, growing business. Once you have the team, having the right team and nurturing the right team is literally the most important thing that you need to do in a startup. Were there challenges? I think the usual ones, right? Finding talent is extremely difficult. Onboarding them in the right manner, retaining them in the right manner, continues to be a difficult job. It becomes even more difficult when you're looking at talent which has SaaS experience, because Delhi NCR is not the most lucrative location when it comes to for blooming SaaS businesses. Chennai took that spot long time back and has retained that. Finding talent and getting them to join you physically in person Delhi was like a big challenge for us until the pandemic hit. Right now, of course, we have the flexibility to think sideways and say, okay, we can actually onboard. We can actually consider onboarding anyone and everyone across the entire country as long as they are fit for the job. So yeah,
that's interesting. So we'll come back to the social impact angle we discussed early on. Personally, I love social impact, but I do feel though that in some sense, all of this social impact, take Arvind Eye Care, which is a terrific business, in fact, which is a terrific mission, that's what I would call, and even the Akshay Patra Foundation. But their success actually also hides a lot of things about the system that is around us, doesn't it? An 80 rupee cornea implant is definitely great, but that also means that we've not solved the income problem for a very, very long time. The last time, I think 3 years ago, I was in TTK Prestige board meeting, and the annual general meeting. And in the annual general meeting, TT Jagannathan was reading out the annual report, and one of the things that they were saying in the annual report was that incomes had become unpredictable. Demonetization had happened, GST and stuff like that. And funnily enough, that was the first time in my mind a large enterprise in India had started talking about the elephant in the room, so to speak. Nobody talks about income in India. Nobody talks about, amidst all this, let's take the TikTok example itself that you referenced some time ago. While on the national security and all of these angles, it definitely sounds like it's a blow that we need to deal, or rather, it sounds like a logical tit for tat. And maybe, yes, market access should be controlled. These are always debatable topics. But at the core of it, every move of sorts is wreaking some sort of havoc on the incomes. And that is perhaps one of the reasons why social impact and social entrepreneurship resonate so deeply with a lot of us. And I personally think it's time to change the paradigm. The first time I came across Arvind Eye Care was when C.K. Prahalad, the famous management guru, talked about it in his book, The Fortune at the Bottom of the Pyramid. But the unfortunate aspect of it is it has not led to mass scale innovation. It has not led to mass scale wealth creation. It should lead to, I believe the fundamental problem in our country that we have is wealth creation. And we talk about everything but that.
You know what? There actually, I remember in 2010 when I had written down a blog post that the fortune is not at the bottom of the pyramid. The fortune is in the middle of the diamond. So when you actually stretch the diamond, so India actually is not a pyramid, right? India is, there is extreme poverty, right? And there is now what is coming up as the great Indian middle class. And you sort of have, the low middle class, the middle class, and the upper middle class, right? So, and I remember that post was, it sort of said a very simple answer that more than consumers, right, the future will essentially belong to the builders or the makers and the creators. And that's where the middle of the diamond becomes a very, very important portion to focus on, right? It is the middle class India, right? The people like us who sort of rarely go out there and while we are obviously consuming and trying to generate income and wealth and so on and so forth, right? It is these people who will actually go out there and create, and it is only once you create that's when you open up, you sort of possibly open opportunities of creating actual wealth, real wealth. Yeah,
I agree. But indulge me for a moment here. What's the diamond analogy? What's a diamond here?
So when you pull the pyramid from the middle point of the base, it takes the shape of a diamond.
Okay. So it's sort of like an inverted trapezium, so to speak.
It is an inverted trapezium. And so basically countering C.K. Prahlad's theory that the fortune is definitely not at the bottom. It is right in the middle with the great in middle class.
Yeah, and not to pick on the symbol, but I suppose you're referring to a rhombus because the rich class is really, really thin in India, and we have to push the poor up to the middle class and therefore become a rhombus of sorts, isn't it?
True. Yes.
Yeah. Fabulous. So you do agree, social impact, there's nothing wrong in it. I'm definitely for it, but I think the longer we have, and we are only looking at one side of the equation. For every meal that is actually delivered by Akshay Patra, what it also means is that there is some degree of self-reliance that's not actually coming to the people, right? for every social enterprise, case in, or rather, an anecdotal piece of information. Do you know that we have 42 lakh registered NGOs in the country?
Wow, that's an incredible number.
42 lakh. Yeah, if I remember my numbers right, it's almost one NGO for every 10 or 20 Indians.
Incredible, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like something wrong with that picture. It's something excessively wrong with that picture. Either these are just meaningless enterprises masquerading as NGOs, or our civic and our civic society is so broken that we need so many NGOs to solve it. In effect, all we are creating is chaos. So I did want to ask one question. Obviously, with all of this, you are seeing, you know who the audience is, what their persona is. They're clicking on so many things. What sort of insightful, counterintuitive insights have thrown up because of the massive amounts of data that you are seeing?
Okay. I would rather talk about an insight into the persona, right, that we serve. And our persona remains the editor, right? And this, again, just like everything else, came in from a customer conversation that I was having. Is that okay if I share this one?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I was speaking with this journalist who had become COO of a digital newsroom, and this person came in from the print background, right? He had seen the whole cycle of actually filing stories to the editor finalizing the stories, the layouting of the newspaper, and the paper actually going to the print, and finally the paper actually hits the hands of readers. And he mentioned something very, very innate. He mentioned that back in 90s or back in 2000s, we had to wait for one entire day to get the first reaction to what we had created. If a journalist would file a story at 9 p.m., they would get their first reaction from a reader possibly by 10 a.m. in the morning the next day. The feedback cycle was way too long, and plus there was really no way to for them to actually see the feedback, right? It was still coming to them in different forms and means. Fast forward to digital, the editors are now able to publish stories really quickly, really swiftly, and they're now able to get first-hand feedback from their audience when they're actually consuming news, in terms of comments or in terms of the traction or the conversation on social platforms like Twitter and Facebook and so on. And one of these editors mentioned this to me, and he said, I love the capability of reaching to my audience using just one click of a button, because now I actually have a solid feedback loop for myself. So if I have to change my story, if I have to change my perspective, if I have to update my numbers, I can do that right over here, sitting while I've just within 5 minutes of me publishing a story, rather than waiting for 12 to 16 to 18 to 24 hours to get that feedback back. I think that really for us is the epiphany, that shortening the feedback loop, the feedback cycle from well over 12 hours to now just a couple of minutes.
That's extremely potent. In fact, as you're describing it, I'm not only am I getting goosebumps, I'm almost feeling like saying that's borderline dangerous. It's like so much power, or rather so much such instant feedback, isn't it?
It is. It absolutely is. In fact, it reminds me of another story when it was budget day, and so the news of what is happening on the budget day has a direct correlation or has a massive influence on the stock market. And the editor of a newspaper told me that the speed at which this article will hit the readers is the speed at which the stock market would respond to the budget that the Indian government has released, right? we might not think of ourselves as the platform that is facilitating that, but when you enable reach and when we facilitate communication, these two are extremely powerful levers to influence people, to drive emotions. And there is nothing more powerful than being able to influence people with just a couple of words delivered on your mobile screen, interrupting you from your existing workflow, forcing you to look up and see what exactly is it that has happened, and allowing that to influence you as a reader, as a consumer of content. When we build the product, we might not have thought like that, but now there is a certain responsibility that the editor carries, and when they use the product, right, they do sort of carry that burden with themselves, that we have to use this power more responsibly than what we have been doing so far, because this is, as you correctly said, it is way too much power in a few hands.
Yeah, it is. And that instant feedback loop can be really addictive.
Oh yes, the crack cocaine bit is really hard to get rid of.
Yeah. I know. Now I exactly understand why you use that analogy to describe it. So awesome. So the previous question, if it's a holy cow topic, you can decline. So I was thinking, my whole thing was just taking the Indian budget itself as an example. If you're serving 72 billion notifications, you must have some sort of a trend line, you must have some sort of an insight, who's clicking what, very similar to, and you are in a different sort of a data universe. Anything that you can talk about on that?
Okay, so I pull out a report today. I'll tell a couple of insights from my side. We've seen people consume, it's the mobile world now, right? We've seen people consume way more content in the morning and in the afternoon. Mobile continues to be the preferred choice of consumption. We've actually seen more consumption happening over the weekends as compared to weekdays. Weekends is when we have seen people click more on notifications in general. And again, right, these are specific to news and media in the context of the pandemic, of course, as well. Right. Yeah. And what else can I think of in terms of insights coming in from our fire hose of notification delivery? You know what, Krishna, I'm drawing a blank right now. I'm sorry. I wish I had more for you right now. Yeah.
No, I think this is good. No, this is good. This is good. We'll talk offline about something that I said to a founder of another data analytics company about bridging the whole gap because they focus on enterprise data pools and drawing insights from them. And you have two sorts of data pools in the world right now, right? You have the consumer data pools, which is your Facebook, your all these social channels and online channels, and then within a company you have different sort of data pools, what they're selling, what a customer is buying from all these interactions. The thing is, the two have never really met, right? And there's an incredible opportunity out there, and I think you guys are, possibly right in the middle of it. Great. This has been a fantastic conversation, Vivek. Love your candor, and it has been a little free-flowing, but unpredictable, and that's exactly how I like it to be. In closing, if you were to offer some words of wisdom for people who are starting out there, what would it be? We spoke about this internally last week when we met in person, all the founders, and we all agreed to do this. We said, next time, if you are ever crazy enough to start yet another business in life, the first thing we'll do is to find our audience. The first thing we'll do is to build our audience before we build the product in the first place. It is so easy to get lost in the woods of building product, building features. Right? What is most important is to figure out who exactly will you sell this to, and is to figure out can you have your first few customers ready before you even have the product out in the first place. Yeah, that's what I would say. Great. Fantastic. I know it feels like such a short journey from 2015 to 2020, but looking at the scale and how the pulse that you have, the finger on the pulse of the market and your customers that you have, I think it's incredible what you've done. This should be a lesson for a lot of people to think about. And what you're doing is really so simple, right? And as Einstein says, it takes a genius to make complicated things simple. You've taken a massive problem like audience engagement and then solve it in a simple way. I know this is only the beginning and there'll be more peaks to scale, and Maharajas of Scale will come back and talk to you at that time. Vivek, it's been fabulous chatting with you. We wish you the very best. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me here, Krishna. Lovely conversation, love the flow. Yeah, I hope this comes out well.
We hope you enjoyed this story. If this story made a difference to you, tell us by leaving a comment on the website or our social media channels. Help us spread the love by subscribing, liking, and sharing our show. We welcome speaker suggestions and collaboration. Write to me at tanya@maharajasofscale.com.